Hello, and welcome to the very first Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is going to be a podcast where I, Matthew Whitby, invite some amazing creators from the DMs Guild on to just sort of chat about their creative process. And I couldn't think of a better guest than JVC Parry. Thank you very much for joining me. This is
Hi.
going to be a bit of an adventure.
Yeah.
So I guess as the honorary first guest, for those who don't know you or maybe just checking for the first time, what sort of products are you known for? I guess is the first question.
Sure. So I think probably I'm best known for adventure products. It's what the majority of the stuff that I self-publish on the DMsGuild is adventure material.
And so any sort of like titles or like what would you say is like your favorite work that you go forward as like this sort of summarizes who I am as a creator?
Yeah, well, definitely it's probably my best known, and it's definitely my favorite is Call from the Deep, which is a big campaign, probably tier 1 almost to tier 3, or probably maybe even into tier 4 depending on how long you take.
So
set in the Sword Coast.
Yeah, I was gonna say Call for the Deep, it is quite a hefty. How long did it take from like start to finish?
So I wrote the first chapter, I think in the summer of 2017. I'm gonna say. I wrote that, and then I had loads of other projects that I needed to work on, so I kind of put it on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all edited and everything. I'd send it to Ken Carcass, who's the editor for that adventure. And then towards the end of 2019, well, around summertime again, I guess, actually, I kind of picked it back up and I thought, oh, actually, I'd really like to just get this done, because I was really passionate about it, and it'd been kind of circulating in my head for so long, but I'd not really had the opportunity to finish it off. Well, I was at the end of my master's by that point, and so I thought, now or never, really. So the rest of that writing took, well, actually, it probably took almost a year to do all of that, because it may well have been actually the start of 20. The more I think about it, the further back I'm reaching in my dates. So I think it probably took a year to write the majority of it, with a couple of months here and there in between.
So I guess that kind of leads on to my next question then. Is so how long have you been creating DM's Guild content then? Because it sounds like at least 2 years. It sounds definitely a little bit longer.
Yeah, my first adventure was published in August 2016. Wow. I'm not sure actually when the DMs Guild kind of was conceived. I think probably in 2016.
Yeah.
So I think it was early.
Roughly towards the sort of creation and stuff like that. Wow.
Yeah. I think I was definitely one of the first. I remember joining the groups when there were very few people in there. I can't remember exactly. I think I heard about it on a Dragon Talk podcast.
Yeah, Greg Tito has a good job for sort of like boosting it up. Quite nicely.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that is probably where I first heard about it. And then the first thing I released was called Seeds of Chaos, which is still up. It's pay what you want. It always has been. It always will be. It's a very short, early level adventure.
I must admit, it does seem like a common practice for like first-time creators to sort of go the sort of first product, pay what you want. I guess it's that sort of almost hesitancy to put like a price tag on this, because like, oh, this is my first attempt, or
definitely. And it's a funny old way of doing things. I think looking back, I probably wouldn't have done pay what you want for my first adventure. I probably would have put a price tag on it.
Yeah.
But the marketplace was entirely new. I was new to writing, so that's what I did.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, your career's got to this point, so it can't have been the worst first step.
Yeah, that's true.
So actually, starting to sort of dig into like your creative process when it comes to creating, myself, I'm also very sort of adventure orientated. Where do you get? What's your first step? How do you get started?
Yeah, normally inspiration will strike from somewhere weird. So a lot of the times I'm inspired by like podcasts. So there are really great sort of podcasts on YouTube with, I really can't remember the name, which is unfortunate, but it's Ed Greenwood, really long form interviews with Ed Greenwood about kind of random realms lore, which are really good viewing. It might be called something like Mages and Sages, something like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously sort of lore you should know sections on the Dragon Talk podcast with Chris Perkins et al. Is a good source of inspiration. And also just reading through the 5th edition books is always kind of eye-opening, because you think you've got a pretty good grasp on the rules and the lore, and then actually you'll stumble across something inevitably that you think, oh, I didn't know that. And then it kind of sends you down this spiral of thinking, well, what can I do with this new information? And a lot of the times for me, that's creating an adventure out of it.
Especially I always mispronounce it, the gadgeters.
Yeah, maybe.
Those little chunks at the end of the book that sort of give you the whole sort of like what Baldur's Gate's like, what Deep's like.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so say you got this sort of spark of inspiration. Where'd you take it? Where'd you go from there?
So for me, in the early days especially, it would be I'm going to draw up a kind of very brief sketched outline, and then run my home group through this idea of an adventure. And if it works, I will then write it up in full. Nowadays, because of a number of reasons, I tend to sketch things out without testing them with my home group first. So I will either come up with kind of a flow chart, which I find very helpful, just scribbled on a piece of A4, or at the very least, I'll come up with kind of a sequence of scenes that I expect to occur in the adventure and try to write around those. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes I do just start writing, do the beginning, then the middle happens, and then the end happens before I've kind of really thought about an overall structure. But I try more and more nowadays to kind of outline a plot first, because it saves time later on when I'm trying to tie up loose ends, essentially.
So very much the sort of like bare skeleton in like a...
Yeah. And I never used to plan anything. I'm a terrible planner, really, in terms of like essay writing at school and university, that sort of thing. I would always just kind of get stuck into it. But I think as time goes on, I'm seeing the benefits of a solid plan more and more, especially with a lot of my work now is freelance rather than DMsGuild publishing. So it's very helpful when working with others to have a plan so that you can, kind of stay efficient and stay focused.
So I'm curious. So when it comes to like working out plot points or creating characters, are there any like I know there's so many interesting tools and stuff like out there. I know so there's a process of where you can open up, D&D Beyond. You can almost like create a character. And sort of like try and do their flaws and stuff like that, and think, okay, what if they weren't confined by the sort of NPC stat block they're given? I don't know, or is it just very much like?
I think for me, it's normally kind of inspired by media, I would say. So if I'm reading a particularly good book that's got an interesting character in it, or I've just seen a film or watched a series that's got someone in it who has inspired me, I tend to take that kind of character archetype, or whatever we want to call it, character trope, and twist it a little bit to make it fit into... Most of my adventures are set on the Sword Coast in Faerun, so try and tweak it in a kind of Faerunian way, I suppose. But in terms of statistics, I'm a big fan of reskinning, so I won't... It's quite rare that I will create a brand new stat block for an NPC. I will never create a new stat block for an ally NPC, only ever for villains, and even then it's quite rare. Normally I'll just say, this is the stat block, but here's a bullet point list of maybe 5 small changes.
With these moderations, they have these spells instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think creating monsters is one of the first things I ever did in the kind of homebrew sphere for Dungeons and Dragons. And it's incredibly rewarding and really fun, but a lot of the time, it's energy that could be better focused elsewhere, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine
unless, of course, you're making a bestiary.
Oh yeah, I suppose for the adventure product and stuff like that, people are looking for the story beats, and if there can be an interesting encounter in them, that can come from like the setting or the creatures or the sort of... All right, cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess so to get the first half of it done, what is your favorite part of the process?
My favourite part of the process is probably towards the end when I see art coming in. To be
Okay,
honest,
yeah.
because I'm at a stage in my career where I can afford to pay for kind of quality custom art for each of my adventures. Seeing them come to life, kind of with the skills and the mind of an artist, is always a very important and very rewarding aspect of the design process. Well, I'm not sure whether the design process is right, but of the writing process, I suppose. Because it's one thing to sort of imagine it and to kind of find stock art that maybe approximates roughly what you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can see something properly realized like that, it really helps to bring scenes to life. And I often go back and tweak things slightly after the art's come in, just to make it kind of fit perfectly with what they've made.
Now, I had the privilege of being in one of these sort of like item compilations, and one of the items I created had some art accompanying it. And yeah, I sort of like that. I've only had that thrill once. I can't imagine for it to be like a sort of like a whole project.
Well, Call from the Deep has got so much. I mean, the budget I put into that on artwork was insane, and really I didn't expect to make it back. I thought, if I draw kind of neutral on this, that's fine. But thankfully, it's been a big success.
Do you want to, not to put you on the spot thing, do you want to call out any of the artists who got involved in that? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the main artist I work with is called Danny Pavlov, and I would say he did perhaps 90% of the pieces in that book, and I'm currently doing an update to make it easier for people to print their own copies.
Oh wow!
And during that process, I'm finding I'm cutting out a lot of words that are unnecessary because I can't help but re-edit and re-edit and re-edit. So I'm filling the gaps with more art from Danny.
Yeah.
I've also, who else worked on that? Nastya Art was another one of the big ones who I brought in kind of last minute to help me out. Martin Sober did a really amazing Eye of the Deep portrait for the monster appendix of it. And a lot of the rest of it was stock art, because obviously a lot of that book is based in the Forgotten Realms, and there are a lot of kind of landscape, for example, stock art that can fit in quite nicely. And Forrest Immel has got some really amazing sort of character class stock art that is amazingly detailed, very reasonably priced for what it is. So I would definitely check that out if you're looking for kind of top tier stock art. And also Dean Spencer, of course.
Oh yeah, no, sorry.
Everyone knows that name by now, I think.
But like I mean, it's fantastic that there is this sort of wealth of stock art available as well, because especially the DMsGuild free stuff, but then also like being able to spend that a little bit more for a price that you can sort of shape.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially for kind of new creators, I think the stock art that's available through DMsGuild is an absolute boon, because you can really bring your product to life by using that stock art. A lot of it is very high quality. Some of it just can go straight into your recycle bin. Yeah. But there is definitely usable stuff in there. Even cover images you can pull out of that thing. So that would be one of my top tips for new creators, is to immediately download those art packs and have a look and see if something inspires you.
So a little cheat that I like to use is there's art galleries that have sort of like royalty free. I sort of like to take those, and then if you have like Photoshop, or there's actually like online websites that do filters, and you can just slap on almost like a fake painting filter, and sometimes that sort of like passes.
There's definitely what you can do, even with, like you're saying, kind of even rudimentary Photoshop skills, or on online programs. So you can really tweak those. I think is it Christian Eichhorn who does a lot of really amazing things with the stock art. So I think he finds a lot of old paintings that are now stock art, and sort of mashes them together to make things that look amazing.
Nice. Like I said, it's all out there. You just need to sort of like go hunting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the other side of the coin then, your favorite part is sort of like the nearing completion, getting the sort of art to sort of see this product all come together. What's the part that sort of causes you to drag your feet a little bit? What's your least favorite part?
So although I pay artists to do the art, I don't pay anyone to do the layout. I do all the layout myself, which I think is a mistake nowadays, because it really bogs me down.
What do you use to do your layout?
InDesign. I use InDesign. For my early products, I used Home Brewery, which is like an online tool that allows you to sort of approximate the style of 5th edition material from the Player's Handbook, for example.
Yeah.
And that was very useful and relatively easy to use. But eventually I kind of decided that I wanted to change things so that it no longer became useful to me. I wanted to use like different background images, for example, rather than just the plain sort of parchment stock.
Yeah.
And I find, at times I find layout very rewarding. When it works and things all go together how I like, I find it very rewarding. But I'm not, I'm very new to InDesign. So it often takes me a long time to work out precisely how to make it do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
And I find sometimes I'll find myself narrowing down on one spread. So just the 2 pages, and I'll edit something until I can get it fit on those 2 pages. And then I'll look at the next page and realize there was kind of a gap for what I was working on anyway. Yeah. So it's just a case for me of, well, either I need to start hiring someone to do the layout work for me, which I might do for shorter products, or I need to step back every now and then and take a look at the whole thing really and see how it flows.
And I suppose it is always a case of like sometimes being both the writer and the layout. Sometimes when you're sorting out the layout, you think I could just include maybe like just another little sentence or another little paragraph here. It just and then this new page. It's
absolutely. Yeah, I think that much like you should never edit your own work.
Yeah,
I'm starting to come around to the idea that probably you should never do the layout for your own work either, because you're right. It's so easy to see a gap and then just think, oh, I'm going to fill it, and then get carried away and then mess everything up.
It's because you have that sort of personal attachment to everything.
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess you kind of touched on this earlier, how one of the things you sort of would suggest to new creators is to dive headfirst into sort of all the stock art available. What's something that you wish you knew earlier as a DMsGuild creator? What was something that...
I think probably we've hit both of the big things for me. So the first I would say is publish your work with a price attached to it, because there's a number of reasons. First, I think it's very rewarding on a personal level to see that you're actually making some money from it. I know, it's not great to attach monetary value to kind of success, in my opinion. But it does feel good to at least see, like, for example, any costs kind of balanced out, or even just your time. You've invested time into making these things, and it's only right that you should be rewarded in some way. And if you're publishing on DMsGuild, that way it's most likely going to be money. It will also help you get noticed, because back in the old days, you could just kind of throw something up and it would stay on that like new title for maybe days. Do you know what I mean? Because people just weren't really releasing as much. So you would be lingering on the front page of DMsGuild for a while. And even if you only made a little bit of money, there was a time where Pay What You Want titles were rife in the top 10, because that was pretty much all there was on there. But nowadays, because the market's more competitive, and because I don't really like to use the word competitive, because I don't think anyone is kind of, the community of the DMsGuild does not feel like a competitive in aggressive kind of competition.
There's just more people. And when there's more people, there's I do like you being able to bust out the back in the old days.
Yeah, back in the old days.
I'm dealing with a DMsGuild veteran.
Well, I'm definitely not the first. There were definitely people before me. I mean, someone I have to give big credit to is Jeff Stevens, who really introduced me into the DMsGuild, and also people like Phil Beckwith, who kind of helped me get my first titles out there. And I'd be interested to hear actually when if you get them on, I'd be interested to see when their first kind of products were, because I don't know who was the first. There must have been a first.
Must have been someone. I wonder if it was. Well, no, because they didn't have the Guild Adept thing from the get-go. They introduced it later. So, okay. Well, there you go. You can give me a task. I will endeavour to.
If you could discover, and I hope this person's got a screenshot of it, but if you could discover the first ever product that's just there alone on the front page.
So I feel like Lysa, she would know that.
Yeah, surely. I would assume so.
So okay, I'll do some research.
That's it to ask.
So back to your point. So you said the first one is put a price to your thing. And
definitely.
the second one, sorry.
The second one I would say is get that art and use, try. It's very eye-opening how a little piece of art and a little bit of layout that you could do on Home Brewery or GM Binder, or even for some people, if they're used to using Microsoft Word, you can do a lot with that. It will really bring your product to life. When I first published Seeds of Chaos, it was white page with black text and red headings, and it was a while before I changed that, and it's even now again it's kind of out of date, so I should probably go back and change it again. But
so you actually went back to your first product and gave it like a little revamp.
Yeah, I've polished up a few of my products over the years. So I did a big update to one called Cult of the Glutton, where I got a new map and I did a whole new layout for it. Like I say, I'm polishing up Call from the Deep now so that it's a bit more not streamlined, but sort of clarified in areas, I suppose. And so that it should be easier for people to print themselves a copy, because I'm not allowed to sell hardback copies.
So I'm guessing as well. So when you say the point of clarifying, is that based off of user feedback, or how you or is it just more the layout, like the way sections are organized, or?
It's mostly self-critique. I don't think I've received a negative piece of feedback about Call from the Deep yet. All the reviews have been 5 stars so far, which is lovely. But I've played through it a few times now, and every time I play through a certain section, I'm like, okay, this needs to be made clearer. And I think because I wrote that first part so long before I revisited it, I needed to be a bit more careful about how those two sections combined. So that's essentially the main body of it.
So I guess to like drill down a little bit deeper to get to like down to, so like if you don't mind like sharing, like technically what was the exact problem that you're trying to solve?
So the biggest issue I had, and this is one of the sort of clear indicators of rookie design, I think, was that there were several choke points in the adventure where to progress you needed to beat a skill check or defeat a foe or something like that. So one of the prime examples, and this is big spoilers, but one of the prime examples is in the crash in the first chapter. It's a crash of a Nautiloid, a Mind Flayer ship, and it has been visited by Sahuagin, the Sea Devils, from around the island. Well, in order to get to the next part of the adventure, which is work out why the Sea Devils were in the crash and what has it done to them, you need to actually find evidence of the Sea Devils there. So initially that was a case of making a load of skill checks. I put a lot in. Can you find the footprints? Can you identify the smell? That sort of thing. But really, that can lead to a place where players fail all those checks or fail a few of them and don't really get the idea. And they're kind of, absolutely. So a note to any new designers would be, don't do that. Instead, say you get there, the footprints are apparent, and give them some small clues that they would be able to see straight away. So the footprints are there, and either they can see which direction they're going in, or they know what the footprints are, that kind of thing. And then use your skill checks to build upon that to give them an even broader picture, would be my advice.
I think that's something that I stumbled across more accidentally, where it's like if there is take footprints in the sand. I don't think, like, if they're fresh, no one can disagree not seeing them. But the idea of these skill checks could be the case of like, okay, well, you can determine that, okay, there's clearly 2 distinct sets of footprints. You can say it's that sort of thing. I think removing choke points or everything that hinges off this one skill point.
So there were a few examples of that in the early chapters where I'd kind of just, again, I think it's just like new design. You don't always think about these things. So I've cleaned them up as one example.
No, thank you so much for like giving a sort of like concrete example and stuff like that. It's a nice little tidbit that you kind of miss out on. So I guess were there any other sort of like finer points you want to add about like things you wish you'd learned earlier, or suggesting to new DMsGuild creators? Or I guess
I think those would be the big ones. Would be put a price tag on it, check out stock art and layout options that are available to you. Probably the third is get an editor as soon as it is possible for you, because not everyone can afford to pay an editor kind of like on a per page basis. But even if you know someone who would be willing to take a look through it, who is experienced in playing the game, maybe see if you can offer them some of the royalties, a cut of the royalties to recompense them, or, if you're going to be taking it seriously, I would recommend getting an editor as soon as you can, because they will. It's very easy to look through your own work and think, oh, I've got it, but actually, you probably don't. No
I think
offense
I've been fortunate enough to work with a whole host of very skilled editors, and I'm yet to meet one that haven't been worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely,
They're amazing people. So I guess the next set of questions, sort of moving on to like the future for yourself and the community as a whole. Do you have like a dream project, something that you're not necessarily working on now, something that's like too huge of a scope, or just like something that you just like one day?
Yeah, mate. So, well, until very recently, Call from the Deep was my dream. I wanted to write kind of a campaign that would rival the sort of thing that Wizards of the Coast was putting out, and I think I've managed to achieve that.
Without question.
So let's see what's next. Well, as I've been saying, a lot of my work now is freelance, so I'm working with other companies. So I guess to work with some of the big companies would be nice. I'm currently working with Nord Games and with Lawsmith, who are two really great companies to work for. So I'm working on Remarkable Shops for Lawsmith, and I'm working on Treacherous Traps for Nord Games. I would like to eventually branch out into other rules systems. So I was recently at Dragon Meet in the UK, and I picked up Call of Cthulhu and Tales from the Loop, and I'd like to kind of broaden my... I've played a lot of indie RPGs, but I've not played a lot of the kind of big names.
Yeah.
So I'd like to try out some of those and maybe try designing for those. And the other one, I think if I was going to publish another thing on DMsGuild, it might be a bestiary, maybe.
Nice. Go back to your roots.
Yeah, probably, because you may know Monsters of the Guild was one of the first things that I helped to produce, and one of the first ones that really kind of made it, as it were. And it might be nice to sort of revisit something. I'm not necessarily saying Monsters of the Guild 2, but it would be nice to do another big collaborative project where we can invest some real time and money into creating something that's really beautiful.
You've heard it first. Monsters of the Guild 2 coming this fall. So actually, I guess building on that, how have you found the transition from just being a hobbyist to going freelance? I mean, has that been quite a...
Yeah, well, I'm really in the early stages of it. Before I was doing a bit of freelance work, but I wasn't really making enough money for it to be taxable in the UK, and for it to be for it to support me, essentially. But obviously, since Call from the Deep's gone out, that has made me kind of a cushion upon which I can kind of sit, and it's given me the opportunity to take more freelance work that I think should be able to sustain me. The transition in terms of the work itself is fine, because essentially I'm just doing what I would be doing, but for people who aren't me.
Yeah.
But in terms of sort of the finances and actually setting up a business is not as easy as maybe I would have liked it to be. And, there is the kind of... You see a lot of stuff on the internet about how difficult it is to make it in the RPG industry, and it's very difficult not to let that impact you. So there are some nights where I'll go to bed and think, oh, okay, actually, am I going to be able to make enough money to pay my rent? But I think as long as you remain positive, and as long as you plan carefully and look, don't just think about what you've got on now, make sure you've got something for next month as well, then I think you can do it. Don't let people tell you you can't do it, basically. I think the work's out there, and as long as you can prove to potential clients that you've got what they need, then I think it's a reasonable way to make a living.
And so do you think that DMsGuild kind of set you up nicely as like building a portfolio of... Oh,
absolutely. There's no way I could be doing what I'm doing now without the DMsGuild, because it's highly unlikely, because it does really give you an opportunity to create a portfolio. The DMsGuild is good for a lot of things, and it's bad for a lot of things, but I don't really know of anywhere... Well, Drive-Thru RPG, I suppose, is the only other place where you could be producing and writing stuff that is going to be noticed in quite the same way. I think itch.io is another kind of up and coming one. I mean, it's very good for indie RPGs. I've not published there, so I don't know what the audience is like. But in terms of putting out a portfolio and demonstrating that you can write, those are definitely places I'd recommend, especially for Dungeons and Dragons material. I don't think you can do better.
And I think it's one of the cases where it's definitely gaining some benefits from the boon of interest in Dungeons and Dragons at the moment. It's like I said, it may be because I exist within the bubble, but Dungeons and Dragons seems to be everywhere right now.
I know what you mean. Especially, I think people do kind of unwittingly create little bubbles around themselves. So every time I log on into Twitter, I'm like, man, everybody in the world is playing Dungeons and Dragons right now.
But then you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, no, of course, I'm only following DMsGuild creators or like D&D. It's like, yeah, of course.
Well, actually, and Dragon Meet earlier this year kind of opened my eyes to that, because I kind of thought, well, Call of Cthulhu is the big one. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is the big one. Apparently, some people play Pathfinder. I don't know. But actually, when I got there, the diversity of games being played is quite striking. There's Star Trek games that I didn't know existed. There's kind of low fantasy games that I saw being played that I didn't know existed. Blades in the Dark, you name it. There's a really wide variety. And I think to some extent, it is a bit of a shame that we've not yet kind of broken the DMsGuild bubble and allowed the contents to spill over other RPG systems. But I think the way things are going, that's probably going to happen soon.
And I mean, I guess that's the benefit of DMsGuild being almost like a sister company or sister connected to the drive-through, is the fact that you can just write, setting agnostic, or any you don't have to go 5e all the way. You can write whatever you need to.
Yeah. Sure.
So you've kind of asked us like that you've got two sort of projects working on pending in the future. So I guess I'll sort of keep it more community focused. Who's the current creator that currently sort of like inspires you, or sort of like you either has helped you from the get-go, or you're always aware of what they're doing even though you're not directly involved in it?
Well, definitely, again, I have to shout out Jeff, because Jeff really did kind of pull me into the DMsGuild, and without that influence I may never have kind of published anything there. I might have just looked at it and thought, not for me, kind of thing. So in terms of kind of the initial inspiration, Jeff is a big name. We've collaborated on a load of projects, and I think his Encounters supplements specifically really gave me my first taste of kind of writing for money, because before that it was all just self-publishing. In terms of inspiring creators kind of that I'm maybe not involved with, I think Oliver Clegg is one of the bigger ones. Because he, despite critique, which he does receive, he's just indomitable. He will not rest until he's done what he wants to do. And I think it's admirable for a start. I think what he produced.
He's unabashedly him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so refreshing.
Well, that's it. Yeah, because I think the kind of material I produce is quite classic D&D. I like to think that it's new in that there's new plot lines and new characters, and it's interesting. But in terms of the style with which I present it, and it's just the style of game that I play, it is classic. Whereas what Oliver does is he tears that all down, and he decides what he wants a product to be about and what he wants a product to do, and then he bends D&D to fit to that, which I think is just incredible.
And I think it sort of highlights that there definitely needs to be, it's nice to have both sides of the spectrum. Just because I'm very much like you. I adhere to the sort of like, I like the sort of D&D format with their adventures stuff out, and I like to sort of mimic that. But then to be able to sit down at a table with everyone, hand everyone a character sheet and say, you guys are now all kobolds. Here's a laser weapon. Let's just forget like the sort of dragon or like looming threat of the world. Let's just have a giggle.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'll ask you again just to sort of like pinpoint. Is there any sort of personal projects you're currently working on at the moment, or is it very much like?
So Well, let's see. The big one will be the update for Call from the Deep.
Yep.
It's not going to make me any money because I'm not changing the way I'm selling it or anything like that. It's purely a kind of a passion project and just really wanting to finish and polish what I've done. Probably we'll speak again this time next year and I'll say, well, I'm just going back to update it one more time.
Just a little bit more polish.
Yeah. But certainly that's one of the big personal projects. I did release a campaign quite a few years ago called Serpent Isle. It was one of the first kind of longer form adventures that I'd written. And I have just finished updating that. I've given it a new layout and I've cleaned up some sections and I'm hoping to release an expansion. So I'll coordinate the release of the upgrade and the expansion because I fancied keeping, I would like to keep publishing things on the DMs Guild, but I'm finding that with the freelancing, I'm increasingly busy.
Yeah, no, of course.
So small things like little expansions to campaigns or doing things like JVC Parry Presents are a way for me to kind of keep my fingers in the pie and keep in touch with the community.
So I've had a question pop into my head.
Okay.
Just because I'm very much like, there's an appeal to writing one-shots and short contained things.
Yeah.
How do you like maintain the interest over like a campaign project or these sort of like because again it's you have to day by day sort of keep in a project that I imagine like took a year or in some cases
Are you talking about interest in terms of how do I keep myself writing or interest?
Yeah, like motivation. Sorry, like motivation.
Sure. Wow, yeah, that's a tough one. I think probably it speaks to my personality in that I like to set big goals and fulfill them. In terms of how to keep yourself motivated on a day-to-day, I would say work on the bits you want to work on when you want to. Don't be constrained by chronology. If you want to work on chapter 4 this weekend, even though you're only halfway through writing chapter 1, then just do it, because the best time to write is when inspiration strikes, in my opinion. I always try it. I think probably in the olden romantic days, people carry around pen and paper or a little notepad and a quill or whatever. But for me, I'm attached to my phone. It's as much a weakness as it is a blessing. But I am attached to it. And when I think of something to write, I just write it down. I'll either open up Google Docs if I've got Wi-Fi or just a notepad if I've not. And I'll just start writing what I've thought. And that, more and more as well, I'm trying my hand at prose and kind of more traditional storytelling. And that's definitely true in that arena as well. I think if you have an idea for a sentence, if you've got an idea for a new NPC in your campaign, just write it down as soon as you think of it. Don't wait until you get home and turn on your laptop.
Because you'll forget it or
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think also you sometimes get the case where if anyone was to open my notes, it may look like the ramblings of a madman.
Worry about joining the sentences after you the 2 sentences would be my advice.
No, perfect. I guess like now that you sort of on this, is there anything else that you feel like through our discussion we haven't really particularly touched upon that you think is like core to the sort of DMs Guild experience? Or
good question. Well, in terms of the DMs Guild experience, I would say make sure to join the community because I see a lot of products, I used to see a lot of products when I was doing reviews that I thought were very good, but because the creators hadn't necessarily engaged so much with the community, they were going unseen. Marketing is a strange beast, and it's not one that I like to fight. But it's one we have to if we want to make any money. So just because you've written something amazing or got incredible artwork for your project doesn't mean that it's going to be a financial success. You do need to engage with the community to get people excited and to get people interested, but also by engaging with the community, you will open yourself up to the ideas of other people who will almost certainly improve your work. There's no, I don't really believe that doing things on your own is the right way to do things. Even though I did write all of Call from the Deep, I was taking feedback from it throughout. And so I think by allowing yourself to hear other people's opinions and opinions that come from backgrounds or groups of people that you wouldn't necessarily normally meet in your day-to-day, that will only serve to help improve your writing.
No, I can only echo that sentiment tenfold. No, I mean, if that's everything, I can only once again thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If people are curious about your work or wanna, see what you're up to, how can they do that?
Sure. The place I'm most active on is my Twitter, which is at JVC Parry. I also have a Facebook page.
Down here somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. I've also got a Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/JVC Parry. Just the format of Facebook means that I'm less likely to post there than I am on Twitter, but as often as possible, I try to coordinate my posts across platforms. I've got a neglected website called jvcparry.com. I used to use it for reviews and articles. I think there's probably some stuff on there that's still worth a read, but I've not touched it in a long time. Where else? Those are the main places. Obviously, you can find my work on DMsGuild at JVC Parry.
I think what we'll do is we'll have a link in the description to just like your profile and stuff like that, so they can find all the products and stuff like that.
And the others I'd suggest are just check out Lawsmith and check out Nord Games, because you'll see me popping up as a writer credit there soon.
Exciting times. Well, once again, thank you very much for being the inaugural guest.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck for the rest of the year, and I get this. This is where I need to think of a funny and witty closing statement for a podcast. I don't have like rocks or anything that can sort of tumble in. I think I'll just keep it short and sweet. Bye. Thanks for coming. Bye.